Whether you're on a tried and true Xbox One, a shiny new Xbox Series S and X, or you're plugging a controller into the front of your PC tower, these controller settings will help you be more accurate, consistent, and get a little bit more aim assist out of Halo Infinite. Now, rather than me just spurting off some numbers at you and being like, hey, these are the best settings, here you go, you want to be a 6.6 on the vert and the horizontal, here's your dead zones and here's your acceleration. I'm going to actually explain what all these settings do, considering they are in almost every single first-person shooter in BR, so if you are a controller player, this is going to be a very valuable video for you to watch, and I do strongly recommend that you stay to the end, not to grab your udders and milk a couple of view minutes out of you, but so you can be John Wick with 2 gamepads. Let's get this thing. Alrighty, Stallions and Stallionettes, 2 things I want to mention right off the bat that I think are awesome features. The first one is if you have Game Pass Ultimate, so not standard, but the $15 a month version that does have support for PC, any settings that you make on the PC or the console will apply to both platforms, which is awesome. So if you're somebody like myself that spends a lot of time playing controller on PC, yes, I'm proficient with a keyboard and mouse, but a lot of times it's a lot more comfortable and convenient for me just to do some casual controller play. Not to mention that aim assist can be pretty sweet in first-person shooters, especially Halo Infinite, where it is rather aggressive. And the thumbstick settings that we're going to be going over today are not only going to make you more accurate, but they're going to kind of cheese or finagle just a little bit, squeeze a little bit more aim assist out of the game. But I just think that's really cool that you can be in your living room and make adjustments to keyboard and mouse keybinds, and when you come over to your PC, it's taking effect. Or you could turn off the vibration function for a controller while you're on your PC and then go log in on your console, and it's already applied. Any trophies you unlock and your progression through the campaign or the story transfer back and forth between your Xbox One or Series and your PC, which I think is great. And the second neat feature is that you can change the input from keyboard and mouse to controller on the fly instantaneously, which I think is great. You don't have to go into a menu and toggle it from gamepad to keyboard and mouse. You can literally be playing with a controller, set that bad boy down. You don't need to unplug it from the tower or anything like that. You just start moving your mouse or your keyboard and it changes input to that, because maybe you want to play a certain section keyboard and mouse, but then driving you prefer to use a controller. All right, enough jaw jacking and lip smacking. You came on this video, well, you didn't come on the video, but you clicked on the video for a reason. Over here in settings, boys. Now, first of all, button mappings, or keybinds as you keyboard and mouse players might call it, all personal preference. Obviously, the only changes that I have made is swapping the left bumper and the right bumper, to where now right bumper is throw grenade instead of equipment, and left bumper is use equipment such as the grappling hook instead of throwing grenades. That's more in line with games like Apex Legends and Call of Duty, and probably what you're used to. One cool thing about this game is you can't just pick presets, you can actually customize per button, which is good. You can really fine tune your button mappings for your liking. That I like, sister. Now, vibration up here, I personally like it, but a lot of people for competitive use will untick this box because it can be slightly disorienting and distracting and take away from, well, your focus and your concentration. So if in your mind you're some competitive esports athlete that's tuning up for his upcoming tourney, then you might want to click this off. But me personally, I leave it on. Now, inverted look controls, what are you, some kind of heathen? Just skip past these. Hold to crouch. On many other first-person shooters and BRs, I do recommend switching to hold to crouch rather than toggle. For example, Apex Legends, because when you're bobbing up and down, strafing back and forth in a gunfight, that will make a huge difference. In Halo, it really doesn't make that big of a difference, considering the only headshot multiplier you get is when a shield is dropped, and you don't really get into a lot of 1v1 face-to-face skirmishes out in the open, not with the maps that we have at launch. So I just leave this unticked. It's currently on toggle. Now, right here, hold to zoom. If you are somebody that holds lanes, basically just holds a corner for the longest time, instead of holding down the left trigger, you can just make it to where you tap, and it'll just sit there aiming down sights or ADSing. I don't really like that. Hold to sprint, not only do I think it's not comfortable to sit there holding down L3, but also that can actually wear out your thumbstick modules quicker. Leave it unticked. I would absolutely leave this bad boy off. Movement assisted steering means that not only the left analog stick, but also where the camera is looking is going to control the steering of a vehicle. To me, that's actually counterintuitive, and it can actually be a little bit confusing to your noggin. Traditional Halo and a lot of other first-person shooters, it's just wherever the camera is looking is where you're going to steer to, and I prefer that. Next up, maintain sprint here. I think this is incredibly beneficial, especially in competitive multiplayer, because every time you mantle or jump over an obstacle, you will roll right back into sprinting and not have to press L3, which again can also save your thumbstick modules. Same thing with auto clamber over here, which I think might be a typo. Maybe that was supposed to be auto climber, or God, I don't know what the hell a clamber is, but these three settings right here in conjunction with each other will make movement a lot more convenient and fast when you are on multiplayer, because auto climber, basically, it doesn't mean that you can just sprint and run into a waist-high wall and you'll jump up automatically. What it means is if you're already jumping and you fall a little bit short and you catch the lip of that ledge, it's going to automatically climb up, which is very convenient. Now, step jump, this one is optional. I have been leaving it on, but I'm probably going to experiment with it, and I feel like down the road I'm going to end up leaving it off. What it does is it modifies your jump height. You jump shorter when you are jumping onto a lower ledge. So more or less the game is predicting where you're about to jump to, but I can see that easily up basically when you're trying to jump this way, when you're about to jump this way and then you pivot and you jump this way, and the game's like, whoop, no, he was gonna do a short jump, and you don't do the Super Mario double jump that you were trying to do, and you get your titties slapped back. So that's not good. Here's the good stuff right here. This is what everyone's dummy moist over, as the kids say. Thumbstick settings over here. You want to be the next Nick Merckx, Scump, Joe, AK-40 Kevin. I don't know why I tossed myself in that ring, but I did. I done did it. Check it out. It's like this. Look acceleration. This is probably the most important setting in my opinion, because out of the box you're at 2 over here, which means there's a huge delay when you input on your right analog stick, where there's a period of time where you move very slowly, where you aim very slowly before it accelerates and picks up to maximum speed. A lot of first-person shooters have this, but it is so minuscule in comparison to Halo Infinite that it's not really noticeable, and you don't need to make a big compensation. We compensating, ladies. We're stuffing our drawers here. We are compensating. I would go at least 4, if not the maximum of 5 over here, so there is like literally 0 delay, because it's super noticeable. What I'd like you to do right now is just go stare at a wall and then hold the right analog stick at full lock, left or right, your preference, dealer's choice, and watch how slow you aim at first before it accelerates. That doesn't do anything for aim assist. That doesn't do anything for your actual human aim. Go ahead and bump her up. Now, look sensitivity. By default, you're over here at 5. I would recommend being at least, and this is the bare minimum, the floor, a 6.6. Now, I personally don't like to mix and match horizontal and vert. A lot of people do, because technically you don't do a lot of vert aiming, but there's a lot of verticality to the maps in Halo. So a lot of times somebody might be peeking you from a ledge, or they might be down below, and you are going to need to compensate. And it's a little bit confusing to the human brain when you have different horizontal and vertical aim speeds. So I keep them even. Now, what I recommend every Stallion and Stallionette watching does for every single first-person shooter that you are going to play with a controller is to have a high right stick, so you get more leverage, where you can make small finite movements when you're sniping and whatnot. And then if you need to snap aim because somebody's behind you, you can do that quickly on the fly. Left stick doesn't matter, because that's just your movement. In fact, I'm going to show you a setting in here that makes your actual walking movement speed a little bit quicker. What I would recommend you do is, if you have a premium or custom controller, put on the highest detachable right thumbstick. Now, if you have a stock controller, not a big deal. There's a company called Kontrol Freeks. They spell it all stupid with a K and some other weird stuff in there. They make little thumbstick cap extensions. Those will be linked in the description below. People have been using those for years because they work. They have better grip for your thumb. They're more comfortable. And most importantly, they raise up the right stick, so you can bump up the in-game sensitivity, where you can make those small movements if you need to. But if you need to snap or flick aim, you can do that too. So again, 6.6 is the bare minimum for Halo Infinite. In fact, I feel like, me personally, I'm eventually going to end up in the 7.5 realm, which is right about here. Don't mess with any of this stuff. Now let's talk about Deadzone and max input threshold. So Deadzone's both the axial and the center. What this means is, if you have a controller that is starting to develop stick drift, either it's an older controller or it's faulty, and your thumbstick modules are starting to give out on you. What that means is you'll either be walking or looking, aiming, without actually touching your thumbsticks. And most modern first-person shooters have some kind of a setting for Deadzone, where instead of having to chuck out your controller and buy a new one, you can simply bump up the Deadzone, where it's not going to register an input on the left or right analog stick until you hit a certain threshold. Now, what you gonna do here is bump this all the way down to 0, and then move around with both your analog sticks. And most likely what's gonna happen is you're gonna stop touching your sticks, and your guy's gonna be walking and looking around and stuff. And then slowly, incrementally start bumping it up until you hit the lowest threshold, the lowest number, where you are no longer walking or aiming without inputting the controller. What this is going to allow you to do, now that you have the lowest dead zone, now you can barely touch the analog stick and you will start to register. But when you're not touching it, you're not drifting. That is the perfect setting. What the heck is max input threshold? That means how far you have to be near the edge or at full lock before it registers that you are at 100%. So if you want to move just right there and have that be 100% and not ever have to go the rest of the way, you can do that. Now, I would not recommend that for the right analog stick because you want every little bit of control, because controller players, you're inherently at a disadvantage compared to a mouse and keyboard player that has 6 to 8 inches mouse pad space for different types of aiming, you know, tracking, snap aiming, flick aiming. With a controller, you have about 3/4 of an inch. That's not a lot of inches, ladies. That's why we try and lift up that right analog stick with something like a Control Freak, bump up the in-game sensitivity, and then dick around with these settings in every single first-person shooter. And as you can see, for my aiming stick, I have the max input threshold, not at its default of 10, but at the maximum possible option of 15, meaning that I do have to be up there scraping plastic, so to speak, which, by the way, most custom and premium controllers have what is called anti-friction rings. Some people refer to them as impact rings, but technically they're called anti-friction rings. So when you're at full lock, it just glides along smooth plastic instead of scraping around the rough shell of a standard controller. Here's my personal settings for the left analog stick. I have it at a 5-10-0. And then on the right analog stick, or my aiming stick, I have a 5-15-0. So as soon as I start touching that right stick, it starts registering, giving me aim assist, and also so I can track enemies as they run across the screen. I don't get to 100% acceleration. It's maximum look speed until I really am up against the shell at full lock. That's what you want. Hopefully I didn't ramble on, but this is an incredibly important topic, especially if you are going to be playing a lot of Halo multiplayer. Now, it's important for campaign or offline story mode as well, but when you start playing competitively, and especially in ranked, you are going to be very glad that you have these settings dialed in. If you found this video beneficial and it added value to your day, liking it will help you to get seen by more gamers, so this information will reach and assist them as well. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, as well as tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, and honest gaming peripheral reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, chairs, boom arms, mics, etc. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.